Hey y'all, Angel Audio here. You are listening to my very first video. It's probably not gonna be the best, but we're here for it, or I'm here for it, because I have to be. Um, Basically, what I'm hoping my channel to mostly be is ghost and creepy things. I'll probably venture off more into random stuff later on, but at the moment I want it to be mostly things that like horror movies, scary stories, ghost stories, creepypasta stuff. Just some creepy things that interest me and I'm hoping will interest other people. Everything I talk about here today are things that I want to go more in depth in different videos later on. I'm just trying to get like a basic feel for it at the moment, so everything's kind of mod podged together and it's not very coherent at times, but it's what I got and it's sort of coherent to me. Anyway, I hope you'll like it. And what I'm going to start out with is a history of ghost stories, because I think it's fun. I don't know. Anyway, we all know ghost stories have been around since the beginning of time. Every place has their version of ghost stories. You'll go back forever and there's ghost stories. Even in the Bible, the very first thing they're like, oh yeah, this angel and God came down and talked to me. That seems like a ghost story. But they're mostly told about basically anybody. Kings, gangsters, old-timey people, new-agey people. Most of the time, it's people who have died early in life or have had mysterious or violent deaths. So if you just die super old and in a really boring way, you'll definitely not be a ghost. What is a ghost, by the way, since we're hoping not to be one? Ghosts or specters are mostly because people believe the soul exists outside the body after death, and that sometimes they stay on Earth. Some cultures have made certain funeral traditions or rituals to make sure ghosts don't come back to haunt us. Most of those rituals is just making sure the body is in one place or like properly buried, not just like in a field somewhere or in a lake. Or, in other cultures like Egyptian, they have make sure all the stuff's together. There's a lot more other traditions that I need to look up. I should look up a bunch of traditions on burial and things. Look, another video idea. Speaking of grave sites, did you know the notorious mobster Al Capone has apparently appeared to disrespectful visitors at his funeral plot in an Illinois cemetery? Spectral banjo music has been supposedly heard coming from Capone's old cell in Alcatraz, where he was one of the first inmates. I knew about the cell part because everybody talks about the cell part, but I didn't know about his grave plot. That's interesting. I feel like everybody haunts their grave at some point, though, Like, I just died. That's where my body is. That's weird. Usual haunting spots for ghosts are something that would be considered important to the ghost, like its last place of residence or where it died. Aside from actual ghostly apparitions, the traditional signs of ghosts range from strange noises, like moaning or screaming, lights either flashing or turning on and off, smells or breezes, like a sudden cool chill going through you, displacement of objects, like something being nudged to the side more, or something falling off a table or a door closing. And then musical things like bells and other musical instruments seemingly making noises on their own. Sometimes a radio turning on, TV turning on, just anything people can say, oh my gosh, it suddenly happened, it's a ghost. It might not be, but it's fun to think. Early ghost sightings, some of the first century AD. Oh my lord, I know how to say words. Roman author and statesman Pliny the Younger recorded one of the first notable ghost stories in his letters, which became famous for their vivid account of life during the heyday of the Roman Empire. Pliny reported that the spectrum of an old man with a long beard rattling chains was haunting his house in Athens. The Greek writer Lucian and Pliny's fellow Roman Plautus also wrote memorable ghost stories centuries later in 85 AD. Another version of a ghost is a poltergeist, and the first poltergeist that was ever reported was in Germany. A poltergeist is a type of ghost that causes physical disturbances like loud noises, falling objects, or things flying or being thrown across the room. So, the movie Poltergeist. Just picture that and a cup being like just yoinked at your head. Did I say yoink? Okay. A poltergeist tortures the family by throwing stones and starting fires, among other things. I guess because back then they didn't really have the electricity part of it. Most of the time, though, poltergeists are more known for buzzing TVs and flickering lights and stuff like that now. They're great. Just to get you a little more familiar with ghosts, here are 3 famous historical ghosts you've probably heard about. One of the most frequently reported ghost sightings in England dates back to the 16th century. Anne Boleyn, the Six Wives, the second wife of King Henry VII and a mother of Queen Elizabeth I, was executed at the Tower of London in May 1536. After being accused of witchcraft, treason, incest, and adultery, sightings of Boleyn's ghost have been reported at the Tower as well as in various other locations, including her childhood home, Never Castle, in Kent. Do you think her ghost likes a musical version of her? Because I like musicals, and I think she would be flattered. I'd be flattered if someone wrote a musical about me. And I know that, like, she's obviously more than just a musical, but literally anytime I hear about Anne Boleyn, I'm just like, wow, the musical? And, it's good. It's great. Anyway, America's one of their first traditions of a historical ghost is one of the most illustrious founding fathers, Ben Franklin. Beginning in the late 19th century, Franklin's ghost was seen near the library of the American Philosophical Society in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I forget that is a real place in America. I keep thinking it's like, oh, little cobblestones, and it's just some weird old town that I, for some reason, thought stopped existing, but it's still a real town in the 21st century that does real things. Some reports held that the statue of Franklin in front of the society comes to life and dances in the streets, which I feel like is exaggerated by a lot, because they always say ghosts need energy, and unless they have a generator hooked up to that thing to give this ghost a burst of energy to possess a entire statue. I don't know, it just feels like a lot. Like, why not just say you've seen him walking around? Instead, they're like, entire statue, it's alive. Weird, but, Anyway, though many ghost sightings have been reported in the White House in Washington, D.C. over the years, perhaps no political figure has made so frequent appearances in the afterlife as Abraham Lincoln, the nation's 16th president. So much stuff has happened to his body, and he was shot tragically, and he was, kind of in a good spot. Like, he had just finished the Civil War. Not to mention his wife was very much into, mediums and stuff, and she got that famous photo taken. So I'm not surprised that he turned into a ghost. Also, the White House has so many ghosts to begin with. I would love to go ghost hunting there. I'll become president just to go ghost hunting there. I want to go ghost hunting in general, but the White House is a very big bucket list ghost hunting place. Anyway, the president was assassinated by being shot in the head at a theater by John Wilkes Booth in April of 1865. Lincoln, formerly a lawyer and congressman from Illinois, is said to have been seen wandering near the old Springfield Capitol building, as well as nearby law office. I don't know why we would want to haunt your job. I hated my other jobs, and even the job I have now that I don't hate, I don't think I'd want to haunt it. I'd want to go somewhere where I actually enjoyed life. But, if you want to be stuck there, go at it, bro. At the White House, everyone from first ladies to prime ministers have reported seeing his ghost or feeling his presence around, especially during the presidency of Franklin D. Roosevelt, who was also a president during turbulent times of war and upheaval. So he's like, hey, similar bros. Since the White House is such a haunted place, here are some other haunted locations. And because some places, instead of just a singular ghost is here, but there's some places that just seem to attract ghosts. Maybe there's a grisly event that occurred there in the past, or there's just an energy or something that just attracts them? I don't know. Ghosts just like certain buildings, and so some building will have like 15 ghosts instead of just one, and it's weird. But one of them is any battlefield at all. Over the centuries, sightings of spectral armies have been reported on famous battlefields around the world, which is completely understandable. A lot of trauma, a lot of gunshots, a lot of stabbings, including important battle sites from the English Civil War in the 17th century, which Abe was part of, for another reason he would be a ghost, the bloody Civil War battlefield of Gettysburg, and World War I sites of Gallipoli near Turks and the Somme near France. For some reason, I only ever hear about Gettysburg, but I'm also in America, so that's probably why they're not telling me about all the other places that have ghosts. Another particularly active center for paranormal activity is the Queen Mary. I've seen a lot of stuff on this one. Like, I've watched Glam and Gore go on it. I've watched Sheen and Ryan go on it. I'd like to go on it. It's a cruise ship built in 1936 for the Cunard White Star Line after serving in the British Royal Navy in World War II. The ship retired in Long Beach, California in 1967. The plan was to turn it into a floating luxury hotel and resort. Since then, the Queen Mary has become notorious for its spectral presence, with more than 50 ghosts reported over the years. I don't know how you keep track of ghosts. Like, how do you know it's not just the same ghost? But, 50 ghosts. It's an impressive number. The ship's last chief engineer, John Smith, reported hearing unexpected sounds and voices from the area near the ship's bow in almost the same location as doomed British aircraft cruiser the Coca-Cola had pierced a hole when it was sank after an accidental wartime crash that killed more than 300 sailors. Smith also claimed to have encountered the ghost of Winston Churchill, or at least his special cigar smoke, which I kind of think is kind of BS. Like, anyone can smoke a cigar. It doesn't have to be Winston Churchill. Anyway, he claims he saw this in the Prime Minister's old stateroom aboard the ship. Many visitors to the Queen Mary have reported seeing a phantom crew member in blue overalls walking the decks. Around the ship's swimming pool, reports have been made of mysterious splashes and ghostly women in old-fashioned bathing suits or dresses along its trails of wet footsteps appear along the pool had been drained. A pool long after the pool had been drained. I know how to say words. So dress in old-timey clothes, get your feet wet, and you can be a ghost. It's really impressive. That's a Halloween costume somewhere. Someone just keeps, like, stepping into water and then walking around in old-timey clothes, and they're like, wow, a ghost. Anyway, not only are some places haunted, but some cities and other places seem to really attract ghosts. A major city is New York, which, understandable, there's so many people there, it's gotta be haunted. But it's especially rich with ghost stories. One of them is the spirit of Peter Stuyvesant. I don't know if I said that right. The city's last Dutch colonel. He has been seen stomping around the East Village on his wooden legs since shortly after his death in 1672. The author Mark Twain is believed to hang the stairwell of his one-time village apartment building, while the ghost of poet Dylan Thomas is said to sometimes occupy his usual corner table at the village White Horse Tavern, where he drank a fatal 18 shots of scotch in 1953. So, 18 shots of scotch is what it takes to kill you. Don't do that. Or do it. Be tougher than Dylan Thomas. Actually, don't do that. I don't want people to see this and be like, she told me to drink 18 shots of scotch. And then they die, and then I'm in trouble. Anyway, perhaps the most famous New York ghost is that of Aaron Burr, who served as vice president under Thomas Jefferson, but is best known for killing Alexander Hamilton in a duel in 1804. There's a whole musical about it. I think it's pretty great. I should do a video of all the ghosts in theater. It'd be a very long video, though, because there's so many ghosts in theater. When I was doing theater, there was a ghost in the theater. There's just a lot of ghosts. Burr's ghost is said to roam the streets of his old neighborhood, also the West Village. So many West Village ghosts. Maybe the living price should go down there, because there's so many ghosts. No one's living there. Everybody's a ghost. Burr's spectral activity is focused particularly on one restaurant, one if by land, two if by sea, which is located in a Barrow Street building that was once Burr's carriage house. Understandable. That's his carriage house. See, it's better than his job. Don't haunt your job. Anyway, another part of this that I do like is just horror stories in general. So, we're going to go into the history of ghosts and horror. It's kind of going to veer more towards just horror in general, but I'll get back to ghosts eventually. It sort of circles around. Anyway, ghost and horror. How ghost stories have evolved. According to Paul Patterson, PhD Associate Professor of English, scary stories have been told for centuries, dating all the way back to ancient culture. We see a lot of these stories start to emerge in ancient Rome writings. In the 1st century, they wrote letters recounting ghost stories they claimed to have witnessed, chains rattling, haunted house type stories. The ghosts are never really harming anyone, but they're always showing up. A lot of the time, the hauntings are because the person was never properly buried. It's tied to respecting the dead. So, once again, the Roman people we've already talked about, but he brings it up. It's good. According to Peterson, stories started to become more menacing in the late 18th century when Gothic fiction came into popularity. Gothic fiction is a very specific dark imagery, bleak fog, filled dark castles. A subgenre, Gothic horror, is a style a lot of the names we're familiar with wrote, and including stories like Frankenstein, Dracula, and even A Christmas Carol. Christmas Carol is actually one of my favorite Christmas movies, but I prefer the Muppet version, because, I don't know, the Mumford and Mumford song, it was always stuck in my head, and I think they're funny, and also Muppets move funny. These stories would combine elements of romance with dark, horrific figures. There aren't always ghost stories. There are some realism. Like in Stephen King, King writes what you can always call American Gothic. Gothic always has this feeling of something is off. King's stories are always set in a small-town America, and while they're not quite ghost stories, you always get the feeling something's not right, which is a lot of ghosts in general. A lot of ghosts is just, I feel a chill, I feel sad, ghosts are blah, and it just makes you upset. Ghosts are just feelings. This feeling is one of the fundamental themes of the horror genre as a whole, the fear of death. It's so completely human, it transcends all of time. Modern people and ancient people are going to have the same fear. We see it in trends like zombie films. Zombies represent death. They come at you and they never stop. They're unrelenting, just like death. Those type of themes just keep coming up over and over again. Whenever people beat the zombie apocalypse in movies and stuff, they're beating death, which gives a lot of false hope to people who fear death, which is, once again, everyone. Sort of. Some people will say they don't fear death. I think everybody does to sort of an extent, because you're never completely positively sure what's on the other side. But there's always going to be people, like older people or people who are like, I'm at peace and stuff like that. And there's always going to be people who are just like, I'm just so tough, I don't fear death, I fear nothing. Alright. But despite basically using the similar themes in horror stories and horror movies are definitely staying forever, like the nightmare that you think of for years after, and your brain just brings it up every now and then to fuck with you. It's great. I don't know why I added this part about horror movies staying. I don't think anybody thought horror movies were going away, but horror is seeing a bit of a resurgence. Jordan Peele and other directors are breathing in new life. More and more female directors are taking on a genre that hasn't always been kind to them. They're confronting race and misogyny in interesting ways, and people are rethinking roles. A lot of really interesting work is being done and will continue to be done. See, I immediately think of the typical, like, final girl and all the virgin sacrifice tropes that they used to use all the time and still use all the time. I'm talking about, like, witchcraft or other rituals. I don't know, but at least people are getting better. And I've seen a lot of horror movies where they've gotten better at not just like, this girl's just here to die, or wow, look at those boobs, and now we stab her. Wah. I do like the song Final Girl, though. Side note, though, blood of a virgin was originally meant to be blood that hasn't been used in a ritual before. People just for some reason have been focusing on people's sexuality, so it turned into a picture of a pure maiden that was being preyed on for evil, which sometimes makes a good story, but it's also a way some people have pushed their views on things, and now it's very ingrained that virgin blood is a sexual virgin, which is lame. Anyway, if I can figure out why it did that, I will totally read this. Oh. This is where I'm basically... It was presented to me as a road trip of horror, or of ghosts, and that's sort of how I'm presenting it to you. This is basically a road trip through Europe in scary things, which is something I would love to do. I'm sure other people would love to do. I'm sure someone's done it, but anyway. Let's start with Europe's arguably most haunted country, Ireland. There are a lot of haunted places, but let's start at the mansion known as Loftus Hall on Hook Peninsula. The origins of the haunted mansion date back to a card game where a demonic spirit is rumored to have lost and has haunted the place since. If demonic spirits are a bit too scary for your European vacation, Ireland's other haunted spots include the Victorian-era prison Crumlin Road Gaol, Kinkleigh's Ghost River, and the clown-haunted medieval fortress Malahide Castle. Here's the thing. Clown-haunted? Like Pennywise clown, or like the original clowns? Because either way, not great for some people, but also, I don't know. I don't know how to take clown haunted. It's not usually what I think of whenever I think of a ghost. Europe's other haunted locations can be found scattered throughout Central Europe. In Luxembourg, the ancient fortress of Bach hides many secrets in its underground tunnels. You may just hear the ghostly calls of Melusine, the wife of Luxembourg's founder, Count Siegfried. Dabble in sorcery at Poland's magical world of Sabath. I said it earlier. Sabathwaka? I'll figure it out eventually. According to legend, the location was a gathering place for witches to fly brooms and cook up potions. Today it's a place where you can cook up some fun of your own. Wow, have fun with ghosts. In Hungary, you'll find all kinds of things to do that will make your hair stand on end. Take a tour of the Labyrinth of Buda Castle in Budapest with only the light of a lantern. Sounds like a tripping hazard. The underground tunnels served as a hospital during World War II and allegedly house spirits going back even further. Or you can find plenty of frights during the light of day at one of the creepiest places in the world, the abandoned ghost town of Derenc. No one has lived there since the 1940s, but you're likely to be convinced that the empty town is still inhabited by something. Make a stop in Slovakia to try and see the ghost in the white dress roaming the old town hall of Slovakia. Even if you don't catch a glimpse of the ghost, you'll see plenty of marvelous things there at the UNESCO World Heritage Site. Or take your haunted exploration over to Austria, where you can dive into the comfort and eeriness of Burg Bersten. The haunted Hotel Castle is said to still be tended by a former owner that is now long gone. Just be sure to make a stop in the Czech Republic to truly test your capacity for creepiness. From the gates of hell to the haunted buildings of Prague, you don't have to seek out haunted spirits. They'll find you, which sounds bad. I don't want to be found, but, go to Prague, you'll be found. Finally, no haunted trip to Europe would be complete without a visit to one of the spookiest places on Earth, the Bran Castle in Romania. The medieval castle is best known as Dracula's Castle and remains one of the most popular and mysterious places in Europe. Visit the legendary castle to see the tower and turrets that Bram Stoker's character called home. Enter after dark if you dare. Other sites on the Dracula route include the medieval town of Sigorsia and the city of Brasov in Transylvania. I know words. Anyway, I've always wanted to go to Dracula's Castle because I've always been one of those little edgy kids who's been watching horror movies since they were little. But I think I want to go there with people now. Before I was just like, I'll go on my own. But now I'm like, no, I want a person to at least be there to witness if I die by Dracula. So anyway, we've been talking a lot about more English type ghosts. Something that I don't think gets covered a lot in American culture is Asian ghosts, which I think are very interesting. I remember reading like a few things on them whenever I was younger. And then obviously whenever I got into anime, I got some information about some other ghosts. But let's get into Asian ghosts. These are some ghosts that like a lot of the time actually have actions instead of just giving you a chill. So and lightly scratching you. These ghosts will kill you. It's great. Like our first one, Xiao Gai. Also, I'm gonna mispronounce probably a lot of these. The drowned ghost. Just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water, translated from Chinese as water ghosts, Shao Gai are the spirits of people who have drowned and whose bodies were never recovered or given the proper burial. They lurk near where they died, waiting and pulling in another victim. Only then will they be freed to move on while the new Shao Gai takes its place. So basically, this reminds me of a Kelpie. You know, the horses that, like, drag you into the water? Except, you know, the Kelpie doesn't leave afterwards. The Kelpie's just there forever, and then it'll drag in another child. But it very much reminds me of a Kelpie. And everything else that lures you in the water, so like mermaids and everything. But I immediately thought Kelpie. Anyway, our second ghost for Asian ghost is the new guy. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing these right. The Avenging Ghost. So this ghost is very angry, having been wrong, abused, or even murdered in life. She spends her death seeking revenge. Like the Western succubus, she sucks out the hun or yang essence from men, eventually killing them. I understand why this happens, honestly. Like, if you get murdered by somebody, you're obviously going to go after them. I know people are going to do the whole not all men thing, but it's... if someone harms you, you usually don't try to, like, befriend the same genre of people, you know? And if some man murdered, abused, or did something bad to a woman, obviously their ghost is going to go after them. It's kind of obvious. Don't abuse people if you don't want to be haunted by a ghost. That's the moral of that story. Jiangshi, the hopping vampire. See, I knew about these. I was so weirded out, and I was like, why on earth are there ghosts hopping? But, you know, this is nice, I guess. According to a Chinese myth, a corpse might reanimate for a few different reasons. A violent death, an improper burial, being struck by lightning, or being hopped over by an animal, especially cats. Regardless of how it got that way, Jiangshi, which means stiff corpse, can only move by hopping and maintains its undead self by sucking the qi, or life force, out of humans. The Jiangshi was the subject of many movies, including hit Hong Kong horror comedy series Mr. Vampire. I used to watch a lot of J-drama and K-drama just because I think it's funny. They're very dramatic, and I'm sure this one is also very dramatic since it's horror comedy. But anyway, why would any animal jumping over a grave, but especially a cat, do you think they have guards at their graveyards to make sure that no animal is jumping over a grave? Because they're like, no, someone jumped a grave, and now we have a vampire hopping around. I understand the Frankenstein thing, though. I don't think we could ever, like, fully reanimate somebody with a bunch of electricity unless you, like, took energy from an entire town. But I think it's interesting, and I think obviously there's a reason, like, Frankenstein was such a big hit, and people have kept doing Frankenstein, like, spin-off type things. But I don't think we're ever actually going to be able to get a real Frankenstein. But it's cool that this one hops. Anyway, the Yuki Onna. See, I knew this one's name. I just didn't know much about her actual story. The Snow Woman. With head-to-toe snow-white ensemble and long black hair, the Japanese Yuki Onna is the stuff of nippy nightmares. She drifts rather than walks, leaving no footprints in the snow behind her. To freeze her victims to death, she simply blows her icy cold breath on them, after which she sucks out their souls. You can see a depiction of Yuki Onna in legendary filmmaker Akira Kurosawa's Dreams. See, this would be horrible for me because I get real cold real quickly. I just liked that I recognized the name, and I was like, hey, I know that one. And then they're like, cold, and I was like, oh, no. Anyway, Yumamba, the mountain witch. Don't take old women on hikes. I don't know why you would in the first place, but definitely don't in Japan. The Japanese Yumamba is said to have started out as a human, but was forced to live in the mountains after being ostracized by her family, and somewhere along the way took up the habit of cannibalism. Myth says she has an additional mouth on top of her head, hidden by hair, all the better to eat you with. See, I think I've seen pictures of her, or at least, like, some ghost lady with a mouth on her head, but I guess I didn't really know before. I was just like, wow, that's creepy. I don't like having a mouth on your head, on top of your head. That's weird. Please don't do that. Anyway, Manangal, the body-separating vampire. Now we're in the body-separating part, which I don't understand, but yeah. Filipino myth has some gnarly creatures of the night, a kind of aswang or vampire shapeshifter that the Manangal not only feasts on pregnant women and their unborn babies, it separates its torso from its lower body in order to fly around, dangling intestines and all. Why would you need to separate from your lower body to fly around? I don't know, but it's a thing. And now there's a ghost dangling its intestines above you. Good job, y'all. Tynek, the baby vampire. Ooh, baby vampire. If you ever hear a baby crying in the middle of the dark wood, that baby may need help, or it might be a vampire. This type of aswang is said to be the spirit of children whose mothers died in childbirth, or those who passed before being baptized. See, I can understand why it would be a ghost that died, like, in childbirth, because it's a very traumatic thing. Both the mother and the baby obviously were lost. If the baby's haunting, then yeah, both were lost. It's traumatizing for the people alive, traumatizing for the people dead. It's a very upsetting thing. But I don't understand the baptism part. I think that's just the Catholics got there so quickly. Like, there's no reason to make a baby go to, like, either be in purgatory or hell or anything just because it wasn't baptized. Like, there's no reason for that. Just let the baby go. It's gone through enough trauma of already almost being born and then suddenly not. Anyway, the Phi Pop, the cannibal ghost. Why are there so many cannibals? Don't be a cannibal. Not only does this hungry ghost from the Thai culture eat human and animal flesh, it can do so from the inside out. Its method is to possess the poor creature, then feast on its organs. A couple of years ago, there was reports of a Phi Pop hunting small villages in Thailand. What with the inexplicable deaths of 4 cows and the illness of 4 police officers. So, 4 cows and 4 pigs. No, I'm joking. Please don't be mad at me. My brother's an MP, and he hates cops, and he also hates the army, so he shouldn't be in that line of work. But he makes the jokes about it all the time, and I'm like, yeah, you know? But anyway, you're gonna get eaten from the inside out if you meet this ghost, so that's great. Love that. Anyway, Phi Ling Klang. I'm pretty sure I did not pronounce that right. The ghost with the gaping wound. If you're outside in southern Thailand and a random stranger joins your group and asks for someone to scratch his back, don't do it. It might be Phi Ling Klang, a ghost who looks normal until he reveals the gaping, festering wound on his back. So his entrails, teeming with maggots, worms, and other squirmies, are visible. I understand it's very creepy, but, what really happens if you do it, you know? What's the worst that can happen? It's gross. That is gross, but I don't know. I think that's just one of those things that they're like, gross, and then they didn't really think much past it. I like how the other ones are like, you'll die, and this one's just gross. Anyway, caressing the floating vampire head. They really like vampires. Similar to the Manangal, the Karase feeds on blood and flesh, but according to the Thai myth, the reason is a curse, as punishment for sins in life. The unfortunate woman is struck forever hungry in the afterlife. During the day, she disguises herself as a normal human, but at night she separates her head from her body and floats around looking for victims. And like the Manangal, her organs are out for all to see. You can see imaging of the Karasanu in many movies, including romantic horror Karasu Valentine. Romantic horror. Yeah, marry that floating head whose guts are just hanging out. Why do the guts have to be hanging out? I mean, I guess it would be weird if it was just like a chop head and there wasn't anything there, but still, why? Just to be gross, I guess? I don't know. Anyway, Chinese folklore features a rich variety of ghosts, monsters, and other supernatural creatures. According to traditional beliefs, a ghost is a spirit form of a person who has died. Ghosts are typically malevolent and will cause harm to the living if provoked. Many Chinese folk beliefs about ghosts have been adopted into the mythologies and folklore of neighboring East Asian cultures, notably Japan, Korea, and Vietnam. Beliefs about ghosts are closely associated with Chinese ancestor worship, where much have been incorporated into Buddhism and in turn influenced and created uniquely Chinese Buddhist beliefs about the supernatural. Traditionally, the Chinese believe that it's possible to contact the spirits of deceased relatives and ancestors through A medium. It is believed that the spirits of the deceased can help them if they were properly respected and rewarded. The annual Hungry Ghost Festival, celebrated in China, Taiwan, Malaysia, Singapore, and elsewhere in the Chinese diaspora, is dedicated to performing rituals to honor and remember the spirits of the dead. On this day, ghosts and other supernatural creatures come out from the underworld and move among the living. I think that sounds fun. I mean, as long as the ghost isn't, harming you, sounds great. But I like most of the Asian ghosts because they actually, do something. They're not just, oh my gosh, I'm cold, I'm upset, or something. Like, most Eastern ghosts, they're just like I'm walking around and freaking you out. These people are like, I'll drag you into the water if you if you look at me wrong. If you even cross my path, you're getting drowned. Anyway, now we're gonna go to some nicer ghosts, like animal spirits. Animal spirits are genuinely nice, because they're animals, and most of them don't have vengeance on their mind. Cause what? I don't know. You didn't give me enough snackies? I'm gonna kill you. John Wick's dog is out there, motherfucker. Anyway, animal ghosts are spirits of animals that have recently passed. Typically, animal ghosts are cats or dogs, but there have been sightings of other species, such as horses and birds. Animal ghosts are much rarer than the spirits of humans. They usually haunt where they lived, not where they died, and often linger in areas where they felt most comfortable, such as near the bed or their feeding area. Normally, animal ghosts are heard and not seen. Sometimes they can interact with inanimate objects, such as their favorite ball, or they leave an imprint on the bed, couch, or wherever they preferred to nap when they were alive. Animal spirits are rarely dangerous. They are typically friendly, but fortunately, even the angry or vicious ones are incapable of harming the living. I know some old graveyards in Europe and old American graveyards believe that whoever was the first to be buried in a graveyard would stay there and help others pass on. So they would bury dogs first and stop loved ones from having that fate for the rest of the time. This would make what some people call a Grimm. There's obviously several different versions of the Grimm throughout different stories. We can talk about that. But I know a very popular one is Harry Potter. The Grimm that's in the bottom of his teacup, which turns out to be Sirius Black. So just for some of you Harry Potter nerds out there. Grimm, dog, ghost, yay! Yay! Anyway, dog spirits that wander the graveyard, helping spirits along the way. Some of the stories make them out to be more of a guard dog, and some of them say that they're bad omens. If you see one, it's a sign of death or misfortune is coming your way. I know a lot of people, if you hear the howl of one, they think you're gonna die. But I don't really know how you can tell if it's just a regular dog or a Grimm. But, in a graveyard, hear a howl. Sorry, bud, I guess. Anyway, speaking of some ghost dogs, some truckers claim seeing black dogs rush across the road late at night when they're feeling tired is like a bad omen. If you see a dog, it's like saying you need to wake up, or it's to warn you that you're going to crash. My uncle, the man that raised me, he's been a trucker for his whole life, and he always says on long drives, if you see a black dog or some other animal, just you gotta stop. You can't. You either need to park or find some way to wake up fast because you're about to crash. Anyway, I used to work late nights, and I would be driving around 2 a.m. or something, and I always be watching out for that because I was I don't want to die. It's not great. Okay, some claim animal ghosts can be a warning for bad things coming, or they can try to distract you so you don't go and do something to put yourself in harm's way. A man on TikTok was riding his motorcycle when he saw a dog on the side of the road and stopped to help it. In the video, you can see the dog, and you can see him interacting with it when he tries to figure out where it came from, and he turns back to find the dog gone without a trace. The man then claims that a wreck happened in the area he was about to head to, but when he saw the dog, he decided to take a different route, and it saved his life. So I saw this TikTok video. I'm the one who wrote this little part. Some of these things I wrote, some of them are articles I found, and I've tried to change a little bit, but Anyway, I saw this TikTok video. I thought it was very compelling because the area he was in, even unless he edited it really well, you would have had to see the dog run away and you couldn't see the dog run away. He like turned to look at this house and say, I think this is where this dog is from. And then he turned back and it was gone. And then he said in the comments later that there was an accident, a place he was about to go to, but after seeing the dog, he just like stopped and spent the night somewhere instead of going to that area. So it's very nice that they are helping people most of the time, which does sound like animals in general. I feel like they're usually very happy creatures. Obviously, instincts make some of them more violent, and then obviously some people have raised some of them to be more violent, but most animals are genuinely happy and kind creatures, so I'm not surprised that in the afterlife they try to help. Anyway, I figured we'd end this on sort of a darker tone after doing light and lovely animals. Demons. Demons are always going to get brought up in the ghost thing. It's kind of hard to separate them at times because you can't really tell, you know? It's either, wow, ghost, or wow, demon, and you're gonna accept it. There's some ways to tell, but, you know. Anyway, demons are not a type of ghost. They are non-human spirits. Demons can disguise themselves as friendly spirits, but they aren't anything but. But they are anything but. I know how to read. They feed off the humans in a household and can sometimes even possess the weak-minded. Since demons can disguise themselves, it is very difficult to identify when you have one. There are two major signs of demons' presence. If you or anyone else in your household is feeling lethargic or depressed without a history of depression in the family, this can be a major indication that a demon is absorbing their energy. If someone develops a shocking personality shift, even if it's only for a short bouts of time, this can indicate temporary or long-term possession. If you believe that you have a demon in your home, do not try to communicate with it, and do not try to remove the demon yourself. Contact a local priest or shaman who will perform the proper rituals to get rid of this haunting. I know words. Demons tend to cause more harm than good than ghosts, and while ghosts sometimes aren't pleasant, demons seem to want to cause harm and possess people or their loved ones. And if you believe in Christianity, then they're usually sent to bring you and your loved ones' souls to hell. And if you don't, you know, I feel like if you don't, they're more of just like property damage. Or they'll bring you to your religion's version of hell, I guess. I don't know. Demons and ghosts, I know, like, people are like, oh, if they exist, then that confirms this religion. But there's been so many ghosts and so many different versions of every religion. I don't know. I think everybody should believe their own thing, and then their ghost and their demon, well, bring them to their version of hell or heaven. You know? If it causes you physical pain, then that doesn't have anything to do with religion. That's just an entity being angry. That's not telling you God's real. That's just telling you it's angry and it will hurt you. Anyway, that is all I got at this time. It's already sort of a long video. This obviously isn't everything I want to talk about. I want to go more into depth about some of these things. I obviously haven't brought up some of the other stuff I want to talk about. Like, I want to talk about more cultures than just, you know, the basic Asian and English. Like, I want to go into like some Hispanic, some African, some stuff like that. I also want to go into like creepypastas, conspiracy theories, just any creepy thing that really piques my interest at the time. I just figured I would try to get this out. I've been procrastinating it for like ever because I wanted to start doing them at the beginning of October, but then my voice got sick. It's not fully recovered, but I'm like, if I want to get this out, gotta do it now. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. I'm hoping I like it enough to put it out. I'm not great at editing yet, so there's gonna be a lot of awkward moments. You probably heard some weird, awkward laughing in there, but, you know, it can only get better from here. Probably. Maybe. Anyway, I hope you like this. Hopefully it'll be out on Halloween, so happy Halloween. If you don't see it on Halloween, then just happy good day, or good night. I hope you do great, and I hope you don't get possessed by a ghost or anything. See ya!